tonight we have a Hedge Hog. Yeah. So this is a hedge trimmer, electric, and it's been sitting a while, and I'm not a real big fan of these as far as trimming shrubs, because what tends to happen is you get the outside all shaped and it's green, and you keep trimming it, but if you look just inside that first layer of leaves, you'll see it's all dead. Now that being said, there is a place for these, and it'd be nice to have it all cleaned up. So that's what we're going to be after. If you can see here on the cutting blade, it's all gummed up. It's been quite a while, and it comes off. You know, it's not too bad, but a lot of times you use this on, you know, yews or junipers or some sort of evergreen. It's sappy, you know, they get gummed up, and it hasn't run in a while. So before we'd fire it up, I want to take this apart and make sure that we can get this all clean, get all that off of there, oil it up. Shouldn't be too bad. I've put together a few things here before we started. Kind of tough to see. Oh, there's one there. I got a light on it. You can see that screw right here. It's got a Torx head, and that's what's in all of these holes, all through here. Torx heads, those star bits, they are they're numbered. Smaller number, smaller screw. These ended up to be T15s, Torx. So we're going to get into that. Trigger, and the trigger's got a lock on it, and I was noticing this was kind of hinky. When that lock is there, you can't pull the trigger. So what you have to do is pull this back, and it works really hard as I'm doing this one-handed. And it feels like it should work easier than that. So we're going to take a look at that, because then what you can do too is then you can hold this back, and that holds the trigger in the on position, so you don't have to hold the thing down while you're hedge hogging. And then you pull the trigger up a little bit, let it go. See that? It's sticky. I don't like that. We'll see what we can do with it. It just might be what it is. And then here on the back is the plug. It's pretty gnarly looking, so we'll clean that up. The bottom this is a cable lock. So the idea, you see it's just this little lever there. The idea is that you put your electric cord in a loop, and just before the plug, and you loop it in there, and that holds it. So while you're hedge hogging, if you get, you know, to the end of your cord or get close, you don't pull the power out of it. It just clips in there. There's nothing to that. It's just got to be a piece of bent plastic. It doesn't feel like a spring or anything. So we're going to take this apart, and I had set a couple wrenches aside. We need a 1/4 inch up on top, and we're going to be 11/32s here on the bottom. And if you can see down in there, those are keep nuts. Those are lock nuts. They've got a nylon insert in them, and we might screw those up a little bit. Sometimes when you take them apart, you do okay. Sometimes when you take them apart, they don't keep anymore. The idea there is that you can, as it's vibrating, or if you've got things that are turning or whatever, those don't loosen on you. We should probably be okay. I don't imagine this thing is going to go real crazy. if they do get a little loose, we can put a little Loctite in there, get them to bind up a little better, or I guess if we had to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little nuts, we'd probably be out, about $1.50 down at the hardware store. So we're trying to stay home though, folks. We're going to try to save those. All right, so yeah, I'll get you in the stand, and then we'll start unbolting the Hedge Hog. Stand by. Okay, I got you up where you shouldn't have to be looking at my coconut too much and still see what's going on. So we're going to attack this thing, and we're going to start here and just start working that way. We can't get the blades off until we got all this out of the way. I'm not sure how they're connected up here. And I've got a hunch too, because I'm seeing this shmoo up in there, that if the blade is gorped up here, chances are, as this thing was running, it's pulling stuff into here. So, all right. That's a magnet. Try to keep all the screws in the same place. Yeah, you see that? Up in there? All those pine needles and whatever else. It's on both sides. Yeah, she's all gummed up. Yeah, so we'll take it apart and see what we can see. Okay, let's see if we can get this handle off next. Got a couple things over here. Same size, T15. These are like a machine screw. These have like that's for going into plastic. These are fighting just a little bit. Now those black ones that are all through here, they also have a slot head on them. I don't know if you can see that. That was not a good one. The camera cooperates with me, but it's a Torx head here, but it's also got a slot in there that we can get a standard screwdriver in it. I got one in case we need it. I prefer the Torx because you can just engage more of the screw for loosening that up. Let's see what we see. Okay, so this is going to come up this way. It slides onto the body. Here. Yep. More shmoo. Part of it, some sort of dead bug. But here's the housing for the motor. We really shouldn't have to take any of that apart, but that's where those machine screws that held the handle on went. Okay, so let's keep digging. It'll be interesting when we get back here. You're dealing with those triggers. Sometimes when you get there, you gotta be careful. You gotta be spring loaded, and you pop that off and you never go find it. That's a magnet. put it on the end of your screwdriver, and now you got a magnet screwdriver. Okay, well, we got to remember this. Those small ones, let's put that with the guard. That's over there, because these are all different sizes now, so this should be interesting. These were the only two that look like this, and those go with the handle. And we're not going to do that though, because we'll forget they're in there and go on a scavenger hunt. This has even got goo up in there. Ugh. So we'll put those screws with the handle, and see, there's this pattern: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I'm going to try to do in this dish here, I'll show you a little trick. When you're taking stuff like this apart, a little piece of tape on the top edge of that. So now you know that's the top of the dish. And then you can take those screws out and you put them in the dish, kind of relative positions. And if they're different sizes, you got a good chance of getting them back where they're supposed to go. You don't have to. Every little bit helps. Come on. Alright, those are the same size. I have a hunch, just by the feel of this thing, these are going to be long. Maybe this one back here, and these two are going to be short. And that's the top one. 1, 2, 3. This one or this one. Let's go here. I've been wrong before. Or they're all going to be the same size. Can't make it too easy, right? 5. What are we going to have? Body's coming apart on the back. Woohoo, there it goes. I'm watching for springs. I've played that game before. Okay, that one's kind of stuck in there. I think it's actually punched through the body. Huh. Yeah, that one had punched down through that hole. It wasn't totally engaged on that. So you might have to put a little washer on that. Okay, and that one goes there. So those are all the same size. Cool. Okay. This is where I'm a little concerned that there's going to be some sort of springy bit. And we're going to blow that up. So I'm being a little cautious. Let's see what we can see in there. The contact switch here, and it runs back to the 2 plugs, the prongs for the plug. Okay, those are just loose in there, and they are polarized. So the wide blade, the common, the white, is on top. We want to remember that. Try to get a little light on this. Sometimes these have little plastic catches in there. And there it goes. Did you hear it? Sometimes when these get older, those get brittle. We crack that. Hey. So here you can see, you can see, but there's that back hole. Got all blown out. That's weird. I know for a fact that this thing has never been apart. It's been something they screwed up at the old Black & Decker plant, Towson, Maryland, USA. Okay, so here's what we were talking about before. get you down in here. You know, I'm going to do shaky cam so you can see what's going on. Here's the plug, right? The wide one up on top. That's really kind of nice. Those will just slide right out, and we can do a little piece of fine sandpaper on those and clean those contacts up. There's that cord clip. You know, when he said I don't think there's a spring in it, there isn't. This is the spring. That blade standing up, it just catches on that body there. See? Not the greatest way to do it, I guess. Tis what tis. Contact switch. So here's the safety mechanism. That's got a spring on it. I knew there was going to be one in there somewhere. And that's rubbing. We're going to check on that. See if that, maybe it's just, I think we can maybe finesse that plastic a little bit up in there, because this is just going to lift out. That's nothing really much to it. This, you see, that's just a spring-loaded switch. It's really pretty basic, right? So when the safety's off, you can pull the trigger and it engages a switch. And that locks, and okay. And the switch runs to this little board, and that's going to step down the 120 coming in here, and it's going to step it down for whatever the motor wants to see. It's probably a speed control too, so it doesn't go absolutely bananas on you. Contacts, they don't look bad, I guess. Get a little light in there for you. You can see the armature of the motor down in there. And a little gooey up on top. It doesn't look like anything got down into the windings, which is nice. And cooling fan. And there's where all the schmoo got piled up. It really doesn't look too bad. I hope if you could see. There you go. Evergreens. So, yeah. Let's start cleaning it up. Stand by. Okay, so this is what they call an acid brush. These things are dirt cheap. They're not really for painting anything. They're just really stiff bristles, but the bristles are chemical resistant. And yeah, I keep these around. They're just awesome for cleaning, getting oil or grease. I keep them in my grease cans. If you got to brush on some like white lithium grease or wheel bearing grease on stuff, they're great. Dirt cheap. Keep them around. Something that you can do with them though is if you cut the bristles down, give them a haircut. They're real stiff now, and you can use that for cleaning this kind of stuff up. So I got the shop vac over here, and I don't want to spray anything in there because the idea is we're trying to get this stuff out, and we're going to do as much as we can from the top. I don't really think we want to get into popping all of this out. You know, there's not a whole lot in here, but we'll see. I'd really rather not do that. We got a couple tricks. Okay, fire up the shop vac and make some noise. Let's see if we can clean that up. It doesn't look too bad. Yeah, this is kind of greasy and grimy in here yet. What is that going to look like? Because I'm just a little leery. Some of these wires up here, I mean, they're loomed pretty well, and they're clipped into this. This is old enough, I'm a little concerned that it's brittle. So we're gonna be careful. Okay, here is this bottom plate. This is actually here the only thing that's holding the bar assembly onto the motor, and there's all sorts of schmutz up in there too. So let's see if that's gonna let go. Those are tight, which I guess is good, because the last thing you want to be doing is hedge hogging and have the business end go flying off. These look to be the same as those machine screws we used on the handle. Just trying to hold that steady. You know, I normally for stuff like this, it wouldn't be a bad thing to I got the drill set up. Could put a Torx bit on there, but these castings are sometimes not the greatest, and if that starts to hang up a little bit, I'd rather feel that in the screwdriver than strip it all out, and then we got a mess. See what we get. Ugh. Okay, so there's a kind of an eccentric here, so I'm gonna get you down here so you can see this. So yeah, here's all that nasty, right? Look at that. Yeah, we got to get that out of there. So that was oiled up or greased, which is good. What's not brilliant is that the grease, and it's by no fault of the end use, you can see it all gummed up on the end where that meets up. So here's how this works. So this bit spins round, 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 round. And this little bushing here rides here. And as that goes around, that's just going to pull this back and forth. It rides on this little cam there. You see that sticking up there. Yeah, pretty simple setup. That's gross. All right, let's get that cleaned up. Stand by. Okay, I'll bring you back so you can see this. That drive gear with the that all just came right out of there. Looks like that's a bushing. It may or may not be loose in there. I wanted to be kind of careful because the last thing I wanted to do is put the vacuum in there, and it's not going to do us much good anyway. You can see. Get that in there. That is gooey. Gross. That little gear there on the left, that's what comes off the motor. So that engages with that. And yeah, you can see there's remnants of the grease that they used up in there. And, you know, we're going to grease this back up again for sure. And all that's going to happen again over time, I suppose. But what happens is that grease gets hard after a while, and I didn't even bother trying to plug it in. I know it works, but I was afraid we'd plug it in. The motor's not super strong, but you go and you pull the trigger, and if that's bound up, we're going to just put a lot of wear on that motor. Okay, I'll bring you back. I'm going to get that cleaned out of there. Okay, so that was gooey. You know, we're not after a restoration, but we got that cleaned out. At least we got all the schmoo out, and then got that gear cleaned off. And while I was doing that, I was looking to see if any of these gears had wear marks on them or chatter marks or anything, and it really looks pretty brand new. You know, you can kind of feel around the edges that everything is nice and sharp yet. So that grease, while it was in there, it did its job. Let's get that greased up again and at least get that back in there and set that down so we don't have to worry about those wires. We're going to use some of that wheel bearing grease. There's another one of those little brushes. Yeah, that's what the stuff that was in there is supposed to look like. So we're going to dope this up. And this edge here, I thought that was a wear mark showing up in the movie. You can see that kind of half circle in there. It's kind of a race that this sits up on. There's a little bushing right here in the middle, and it just raises it up just a hair. And with that extra raised lip, it keeps that from chattering, and that's where you can see this little bit of a wear mark right there. You see that kind of half circle around there? That was just where that was. It's not really worn. I think it was just sitting on there when it was in the shed. So we're going to dope this up well. Here's that gear coming off the motor. Dope that all up. And that turns real nice and free. I was able to, once I had that all cleaned up, just take it and spin the motor. Didn't feel like it was binding or gritty or anything like that. Yeah, put a little bit on here in case that would rub. I doubt it. Okay, so let's get this doped up. Hit that back edge, and now this is where that bushing sits that makes the cutter move. And then that there center bushing, that's where it sits on there. I make sure that that's doped up real well, and we're going to get the edges all the way around. Yeah, I thought for a little while when I was going over that, it looked like a couple of these were pretty chewed up, and for something like this, would probably be the end of things if this gear here gets chewed up, just because you're going to get a bunch of chatter and vibration, and it'll start skipping. And as soon as that starts skipping, binding, that motor is going to get unhappy. And yeah. But this is one of those things where I think a lot of these sort of things end up in the trash. Not because there's anything really, I'll try not to get grease all over my hands. Not because there's anything necessarily wrong with them, other than they get kind of bound up, you know. You get that grease gets in there, gets a little hard over time, gets gummy, especially when you're pulling in debris from the cutting bar. Now these, I think, are like little reservoirs. there's really no reason to weight relief that. So I think we'll put a little extra grease down in those. Grease is cheap. And that way, as it's spinning, it'll be kind of self-lubricating after a fashion. That was too much. And we'll get down around here, kind of pack that in. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. A little more up on the top where I was holding it. Gooey. That's good goo. That's gonna help us out. Okay. I think we're pretty well done there. Let's do just a quick check. Doesn't look like we've missed anything down in there, so we can just set that back there. We are going to have to lift that out again when we put the cutting bar back on, but again, those wires, anything, you know, we don't want to end up with a break or a short or something. I'm not going to do anything else with the motor. It's going to be what it's going to be. What else can we do while we're here? Let's take a look at that switch. This, oh, we're not going to play fling the spring. Okay, so just a little spring there to help out that. Boy, that is not a real robust setup. And that post is cracked. Maybe when we took it apart, maybe when it was all together. Could have been a function of this being snug, that it sheared that a little bit. Well, what can we do with that? I think, let's see where this is going to sit. No, it's got me paranoid. I'm glad I noticed it now and not when I put it together. Yeah, I think that was just stressed. That is not a great setup, but what I want to see here is, I gotta move this. I want to see how much of that pin sticks up, because that's going to tell us what our options are here for repairing that. So, okay. When that goes back together, there's a little bit that sticks up into there. Well, we got a couple options here. One, you could try gluing that. I really don't think that's going to do the trick. And I'll show you in a minute. This trigger on the other side of here, it sits tight up against the casting. So any glue that's in there, we'd have to bring it down so that that trigger sat properly, or change the, I think we're borrowing trouble with that. That does explain why this would have been binding a bit, right? Because as that pin is shearing back and forth, it's probably not held on by a whole lot. And, it's locking in here, but it's still doing this, right? So, let's get this back out of here. Let me show you what's going on. shaky cam for a minute. I'll show you, see that? Here it is. Get you in there. That's pretty wibbly, right? Boy, that is dumb how they did that. You seeing that? There's not a whole lot underneath there, because what I was hoping is if that was a more substantial casting underneath there, we could pin it, you know, just pull that whole thing out of there. And we might still do that, and then use some epoxy. Kind of goo it all up, and yeah, see that? Yeah. Huh. Feeling brave? Let's see what we can do. Get you back up here. Well, the I wonder how big that is, because we want to be able to, you know, it's got to be that size so that when it's here, we're trying to eliminate play, so we want that to be tight, and that's not solid here. This is hollow, so there's only a 1/8 of an inch or so on either side that's riding on. Let's see how big that is. Should we see that in fractions? 17 1/28. Yeah, that's useful. 3.4 mil. Okay, so do we have something that's close to 3.5 mil? Probably. Trim nail. 3.4 mil. Remember that. Not even close. 1.8. Okay, let's go a little bigger. These are a ring shank nail, but they might do the trick. 2.8. Yeah, still not there yet. You know, we're going to end up machining something down here. Boy, everything's going to kind of jump from way too small to way too big here in a hurry. Stand by. I'll be right back. Okay, so we might be in business here. Just a box nail. 3.4 mil. And if we try that here, that feels pretty good. That's a little bit of wiggle, but no more than what was in there, I don't think, before it broke. And then here, that's got to go into there. That fits pretty nice. And honestly, having that point on there, because that's going in quite a ways. Okay, I just put my finger on there. You can see, you know, got 1/2 inch. That point on there is going to help us line that back up again. Here's where we got to get brave, folks. Because once we know it's broken, so it has to be fixed. So once we take that off of there, we're going to have to drill and cut this off. We know how much has to go into here. Cut this off, drill that out, drop that in, hit it with epoxy, and probably let it sit overnight. We'll talk about micrometers another day. This thing saved the day. Okay. Well, here we go. Before we do that, just want to make sure that we can hit this thing pretty much dead on with a bit. Ideally here we would want what's called indexed bits. Indexed bits just allow you instead of going from 1/8 to 9/64s, there's many more graduations there. Machinists love those things because you can step those up by sometimes 1/64 or less, and you can really hit it dead on. I think 9/64s is going to do us. It gives us a little bit of wiggle, but that's okay. We want room for that epoxy because we're gonna epoxy this thing pretty well. So the idea here is we're going to take this off, drill it, measure the length of this. That's only sticking out. We said we had about a 1/2 inch to deal with on that side. Trying to do this without having to put it together, but I don't think I can. That's going to be sticking out. I got my little ruler here. Call it 1/4 inch, 5 mil, 6 mil. So we got more than enough room to play. Okay. Surgery. I'm betting that's why this wasn't. I mean, this still isn't great. Don't get me wrong, but that's going to have caused us problems. It's like wiggling a loose tooth. It's just held in there. There it goes. Yeah, that was sheared off more than 2/3 of the way around. All right. Set that there. Now we want to center drill this. This is really, I mean, I'm not going to drill this by hand, but this plastic is so soft. You can see, I mean, you could be here till next Tuesday doing this, but you could do this by hand, but by kind of centering that out before we hit it with the drill. No, it won't walk around too bad on us. Okay, I'm not going to go really any much deeper than that. Starting to on this vein here, it's starting to wiggle a little bit, and I don't want to trade one broken thing for another broken thing. Kind of end up back from zero. So yeah, it had just started to flex, and there's no way to hold on to that anymore, and certainly No reason to. Okay, so how deep did we go? Not very. Just score that just so I can see. Yeah, that's right there. So we've gone down that far, so we can take our pin here, because we said we want the point actually sticking up, because that's going to engage with this side. So we take this and we can mark it a little generous on this side. We don't want to go crazy, because the last thing I want to do is end up too long, and then be another adventure to have. Let's see here. I'm going to cut this off. And, see if we can do it. Yep, that's going to go. Play Go Find the Nail after you launch that across the room. Okay, and then yeah, I'm gonna hit that on the belt sander just to clean that up. But that is gonna live in there, and then this, you know, let's be smart. Just double check that that fits. I got it lined up. And yeah, I see nothing wrong with that. Can you see it down in there? See? There. You can just see that axle moving across there. That's going to be our new pivot point. Everything fits. Yay. Fits too well. It doesn't want to come apart again. Okay, so belt sander and epoxy, and I think that'll do us for tonight. So I'm gonna sign off. I'll glue that up. It's getting pretty late here. Yeah, so in the morning that'll be ready to go, and then we'll tackle the business end of our Hedge Hog, get the schmoo off of there, get all that cleaned up. You know, while we got this here, we might as well see how bad is this moving. Not horrible. We'll look at that tomorrow. Not going to make any decisions today whether or not we pop those. Might be borrowing more trouble than it's worth. All right, folks. Signing off for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Okay, so we're back at it. I got that new pin epoxied in there last night, and when I did that, I put the two halves together so that our new pin, here's the old one, so that when I was sitting there, I didn't want it to slip sideways and then not go together. And there's really no fear of these two things gluing them together, because there's no boss that locks right up tight against it, because that would go in there. So let's crack this apart and see what we can see. So we're going to get that trigger back in there. And you know, I was thinking about that bar, and I got this wrong way around. We've been taking it apart this way. So yeah, let me get you where you can see. Here's our new pin down in there. See that? There's that nail here. And that's rock solid now. And when I made that epoxy, you know, it's kind of like if you're in the kitchen and you're making noodles. You look at it in the pot and you go, ah, that'll never be enough. And you get done cooking it and you realize you're going to be eating noodles for the next 5 days. Epoxy can be kind of like that. You start mixing it and sitting there and you go, ah, that's not enough. And you start putting it on the part and you realize you got epoxy for days. So, you know, a little dab will do you. But what I did, get a light on there for you too, is when I epoxied that, I let the epoxy dribble down into those gussets. So kind of reinforce that, because remember when we were drilling it, that back one back there pointing towards the motor, that started to wiggle. And I didn't want anything weak, so I just let it kind of drip down and just strengthen those a little bit. I've got a hunch that's going to be pretty good. Let's test our hunch. So our trigger was binding up. Let's set this in there. That fell off. Okay. So our trigger's down in there, and now, yeah, I can tell you right now that's already better. If you're seeing a little bit of flex, you see that? Just a little bit of wiggle. That's the whole thing moving. Just because I'm trying to hold this in place and move this, it's effectively zero. This is pretty good. It's still hanging up, going uphill here. And I think where it's actually binding, let me get you down here. Hang on a second. This should be a little easy fix. We're not binding here, and that's all engaging real positive. If you see, see here, there's a little lip on the back side of this, kind of jogs up like that. That catches here, and that's that lock. So we're not going to monkey with that. This is actually riding pretty nice here, so we're not going to monkey with that. But let's get you in close. I want you to look right here. See how that's all scratched up? Super zoom. See that there? I think what's happening is that our trigger, when you squeeze it, is catching on that. Just set up again. I think because it's symmetrical, right? This part of the trigger, it's stepped down there, is catching. You can hear it, and I can, now that I'm kind of fixating on it, I can feel that little catch. So let's take this out. It's catching on here. What do you think? Should we round that over a little bit on one side and see if it helps? I don't see a reason why not. File. Stand by. So let's just take this. We don't want to get into fixing another pin, you know. That's not really doing it. Because remember, this pin is what actually hits the trigger. Switch here. That really didn't do much. Let's see what happened. If anything. Yeah. Yeah, it's just catching on there. That might actually. I'm gonna do a little putzing around on that. I think I'm gonna round over the back edge here because I think it's hitching a little bit here. It's catching that corner. It's definitely catching there a little bit. I'm just going to round those off and bring you back when I got that done. Stand by. Yeah, I think that's going to do the trick. I didn't go bonkers with it. You can see I just kind of took the shoulders off there and there. Just back a little bit, and then I rounded that back corner. I gotta think that's going to do it. We might, just for sake of being thorough, this isn't going to damage the plastic any. Might just put a little bit here, pile up on the back side a little bit, let it be a little self-greasing, I guess. I'll do that on the other side. Yeah. I don't think that's gonna, I mean, that stuff's not gonna ever drip, but it's not gonna come down on our fingers. And while we're in here, let's get this. Might as well. All right, it took all the time to epoxy a pin in there. I know it doesn't go all the way through. You know, we talked about that last night. But we don't want to put anything up here because that's got that lock. So we want to keep that positive lock. I don't want anything moving around. I don't think that's really gonna be a problem. Okay, our switch. There's a little piece of foam here holding that. And that's just because that's the direction of travel. You see that? A piece of foam right here. The foam looks okay. It's not great, but I'm not going to try to get it out of there. It's doing its job. It's actually working a little bit like a shock absorber. So when you squeeze that, it's not plastic on plastic, where we'd have to worry about breaking more out of here. These little contacts. These. Let's get the trigger back in before we get ahead of ourselves. That's it in there. That moves. I wouldn't say it's buttery, but it's a whole lot better than it was, and that ain't broken. Let's get those cleaned off and grab a piece of sandpaper. This is 180. And for the epoxy, use this Gorilla stuff. It's supposed to be a quick set 5-minute epoxy. I don't think it really sets in 5 minutes. That's just what I had. I always leave it set overnight. Now, are these going to pop out of there? Sometimes they put like here's another one where you don't want to break wires. Sometimes they put like little barbs on these. Let's see if that's the case. Yeah, I think it's just really in there tight. So I'll lay that down. Don't go too far. I want to support that on something. Yeah, it's good. Swing him out of the way. Get this one out. Well, this one is pressed in, so go. Everything about this screams consumer grade. This is not a tool that a landscaper who's making a living at this would ever have. There's just no way. Too much plastic, too much, you know, the fact that this doesn't even have a spring on it, you know, it's just bendy plastic. This trigger assembly here, you know, you can see failure points. We know at some point that, I mean, it's not a hinge. It's functioning as a hinge, but it's just skinny plastic. They're allowing to bend. Already seen that fail. You know, I'm going to assume that the switch isn't great. Motor's probably fine. The drive is certainly robust. You know, the business end of it is, it really seems to me that Black & Decker, no, that's one of those companies that used to have a bunch of Black & Decker stuff. Now I really don't. They used to make really pretty decent tools, and I think they probably still do. But it's like, you know, they had a price point. They said, you know, where can we trim as much as we possibly can and still make it do its thing? Well, they put some money into here, and the rest of it's not great. Okay, so we got those sorted. They're not bent or anything. That's in the right place. Got our trigger sorted. Our motors, gear drive there is all cleaned up and greased up, ready to go. I think that's done. On to this. I was thinking on this, and you know, it's moving okay. And I think we're going to be borrowing trouble to take this apart. I really do. You know, under normal circumstances, if I knew I could just run down to Hiller's and grab half a dozen little screws and lock nuts, I'd do that in a heartbeat. But we're trying to stay home, and so, you know, it doesn't Doesn't feel like it's moving too bad. The edges are still kind of sharp. I think we might just try cleaning it up and bolt it back together. All right, stand by. I'm fairly well pleased with that. Yeah, we didn't take that apart. Bit of elbow grease. Got the worst of it off with a little brake cleaner. Seemed to cut that sap and dirt down pretty well. Looks pretty good. On the back. Yeah. Well pleased with that. The cutting edge is working just fine, and what this does is these bigger teeth, these are stationary, and then these are your cutting edges, and they've got cutters on both sides. So as you know, a branch goes this way and this comes back, lops it off, and go back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And so it's pressing whatever it's cutting up against this edge. I've got it up on a block just because I oiled the back. I thought about using like a bar and chain oil, like you would for a chainsaw. I'm sure that would work too. Well, we gave it a shot with this. This is a dry lube PTFE spray. Use this on a lot of my saws. It's dust and dirt won't stick to it, at least not very well. Okay, let's put the two halves back together. We got to get the bar back onto that. Okay, so we're going to lift this back out. And then, I don't want to forget this. That goes on there. It's our guide. Stay. And then where... This is our contact here. So let's hit just this front face. That's one of those little bits that you don't want to lose that as you're taking the stuff apart. Okay. There goes 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Torques. I'll bang it in you. Just cycle that until there. You know, it seemed to me, and maybe there's a reason. I'm not going to torque that yet. I want to make sure we're lined up. I'll show you here in a sec. Maybe there's a reason, maybe not. But it would seem to me like, you know, they had to make this casting with these bulges on it to accommodate the gear. The bar is straight. they've left that open on both sides. That's where all that dust and dirt and everything went up and into. Yeah. This thing might well be 30 years old, so if you got to do this every 30 years, I think you're okay. Now, torque those back down. Hey, just about got a Hedge Hog again. Slide this up here. Okay, so let's do our last kind of nose to tail on the Hedge Hog here. We had the bar was gooey, so we degooed the bar, and that's moving. I'm not going to really move now because it's hooked up to the motor. That was moving fine. We got all the schmoo out of all these valleys where it got piled up. Down in here, we got all that cleaned up, cleaned off the top of the motor. The brushes look okay, so we're not going to monkey with those. The brushes are right here and here. They're spring-loaded. Leave them. Cleaned up the trigger, fixed that post. Kind of chamfered the edges a little bit, so it's not binding anymore, and it's not broken. Nothing wrong back here. We cleaned up the contacts for the plug. Those are tight, and I don't see any rogue bits laying around that don't belong in there. So let's put it back together. Just going to make sure that we got everything lined up. We did have that back screw that was a little wibbly. See, that's one of those things that it's by no fault of ours. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Just like I said, this is not a professional grade tool by any means. So why bother doing all this? Well, I've got a real aversion to throwing things away. There does come a time that tools, especially when you're dealing with definitely consumer end stuff like this, there comes a time where it's just got to go. You know, you're gonna try fixing something and you're not going to be into it. You know, something like this where it had that gear been stripped out. Yeah, you're not going to sit and fix that. Had the bar been broken, you know, for missing teeth or things like that, okay, well, that's kind of done for. You know, the motor goes out, it's done. But, you know, little stuff like that trigger thing, or just popping that apart and cleaning out some grease and fixing it back up again, you know, it's worth an hour, and just kind of cleaning through it, looking to see how it works. You know, how does the thing do what it does? Yeah, see, that is working the way a trigger should. That's not binding up anymore. Amazing what happens when something isn't broke. I'm not sure. I do want something on there. We still have our screw. See, that's going to probably be too big for that. I'm not gonna go nuts trying to make this do something here. Somewhere I've got little rivet washers that might do the trick. Or we're gonna just toss it back in there and not worry about it. It's, you know, I think as long as it's grabbing a little bit, we should be okay. But for, yeah, it's not the right size. Any guesses here? That's going to be way too big. That. I just want something to reinforce the head of that. Yeah, it works. Okay, that's just a little tooth washer. Well, it's number 8 star washer. We're gonna rock with that. Good enough. It fits. It's just a little bigger than the head on that screw, and we're not gonna over tighten anything. Okay, our handle goes next, and this goes this way. There's some tabs that slides in on. Fought us coming apart, fought us going together. 2 screws. So, Hedge Hog lives to hog another day. Come on. So, you know, this is one of those things too, where if you're looking for just a little project and you want to see how stuff goes together, you know, once we can get out and about again, you know, if you're at a yard sale and you see something for a couple bucks, you know, maybe you're getting started off doing some grass cutting and that sort of thing during the summer for some extra cash. I did that. And you want to pick up a little hedge trimmer. You come across these all the time, because I think stuff like this happens. You know, pretty basic problems, just cripple them, because they're not, it's really not meant to be fixed. And this is old enough that it's actually put together with some real parts. Some of these new ones, but you can even see, I mean, that trigger was terrible. Plastic springs, plastic clips, and that kind of plastic, you can't glue it. There's a couple of tricks that you can try, but none of it ever really seems to work. Trigger, locks, unlocks, doesn't bind up anymore on us. Can you see that? So there's that trigger. Lock position, unlock. That was all jammed up before. Well, I guess there's only one thing left to do. Hang on, let me go grab a cord. Okay, did we just spend a couple hours fixing a broken Hedge Hog? We have power. We have a Hedge Hog. You ready? Contact. Okay, it works. It's moving pretty well. I don't smell burning electronics or motors being warm. No undue vibration. That trigger's working properly. Contacts work. So there you go. He lives to hog another hedge. The Black & Decker 18-inch Hedge Hog, back from the brink. All right, everybody. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff down there. Yeah, catch you next time. Peace.